Good morning, everybody.
Good morning.
Hey, I'm Chris Coulters, and I'm going to be walking you guys all through the EC2 hands-on lab, getting started with Linux on Amazon EC2. So you should have your lab guide in front of you, as well as the AWS console open, and we'll walk through it together for these labs in this virtual environment. Scrolling through, we've just learned about what EC2 is, the resizable compute capacity in the cloud. It's your virtual instance. We're going to launch one today and go through those steps to familiarize you with that process and show you how easy it is and what functionality you can do when launching that instance. So the first thing we're going to do is get to that console and go into the EC2 portion of the console. So I'll walk you guys through that and show you some neat tricks while we're there. So I have my console open for my AWS account. You might see something similar, hopefully. In the upper right-hand corner, you'll see a few drop-down menus for things like support. The second item is what region you're in. So as discussed earlier, AWS has a lot of regions all over the world. 5 in the US that are publicly accessible, and then 2 other ones for government workloads or types of workloads. One in Canada you can see here, but if you're in Europe or the Middle East, South America, or parts of Asia, you can choose a region there, and that's where your resources would be deployed when you're in that part of the console. For this lab, we're going to use the Virginia region just to keep things simple. And then the next thing over, account. This is where you can get information about your account, etc. What I like to show customers is this little pin here. This kind of helps navigate through the different services because there's so many of them to make sure, you might use a specific set of them on a given day or time with the work that you do. So I'm going to click this, and I'm going to use this to talk about what services we're going to be using. So we're going to be doing EC2, we're going to be doing S3, we are going to be doing IAM and VPC tomorrow, so let's get those. Up there, and then finally VPC. So then we have all those and they're available. Those are cookie based, so if you do change a browser, you might need to reselect them, but it gives you ability to get that. So that's one of multiple ways we can get to the different services. You can also click here. You can see recently access services, or you can check what grouping your service is. Or what I like to do typically is just type the service in, and then that brings you to the console. And it's just going to ask me to log in again, so I'll do that really quick. And then here we are in the EC2. The front panel is a dashboard. As you can see, the console gets updates often, so I have the option for showing a new experience here. You might or not have it, but you'll have similar menu items as we explore this. So going back to the lab, the first thing, we're now on step 3 because we've already checked the North Virginia region. We're going to create a key pair, and a key pair is a public-private key setting that allows you to access the server, your instances. Typically, it's used just for the first-time access, and you might use your own login password system, such as Active Directory, or you putting your own SSH keys, managed SSH keys into the servers. But this generates one for that first-time access. So logging in, we go to key pairs, and in the upper right-hand corner, select create key pair. Give this a name. I will call this Coulters IM1. And since I'm on a Mac I use the PEM key, but it also provides a PPK key, just a different formatting associated with that, which for Windows boxes, if you're using it, might be better if you're using the SSH tool PuTTY. Cool, so let's just confirm that. Cool, and that's all good. We won't add any tags, but we could do that later. And this could ask you to download this key. Let's go ahead and say yes. And then we have that key downloaded. And it's important to, with that key, that you want to keep that. You want to keep that in a safe spot. You want to make sure you have access to it, or put it in a lockbox associated with passwords if you're sharing it amongst multiple people. But again, typically this is just for the initial boot up of the instance, and then you'll do configurations there. Cool. So it's telling you guys, if you're using an account with multiple people, to name it based off of your name, so you can differentiate that with different accounts. We've gone ahead and downloaded it. Remember, we're going to keep this key, and now we're going to launch a web server. So let's walk through these steps and then do it. We're going to go to the EC2 console and then choose EC2 from the services, and then click Launch Instance. And then we'll select the Omni, and I'll explain this when we get to this portion of the console. So going back here, scrolling up, I'm going to click on Dashboard, and then click on Instances. You could also, it does give you ability from the dashboard to launch an instance, but we're in here. Click on Instance, and we'll click Launch Instance. Cool. And then here we're going to select the Amazon machine image. And as discussed earlier, they're kind of, I like to think of EC2 instances as a combination of two components. There's the disk image. It's kind of your operating system and any configurations, whether it's your code or packages, configurations of those packages. There are all part of like the software. It's the bytes, the bits that are stored on disk on a instance. And then you pair that image with an instance type. So let's go ahead first, select the Amazon Linux 2 image here first. It's the first one. It's one that Amazon provides for you, and it's part of the free tier if you're at that threshold of usage. So select that one. Cool. Then here we're pairing that up with the instance type. And as showed earlier in the slides, and you can scroll down here, I like to use this word, a plethora of instance types to choose from, with different profiles of CPUs and memory. So we'll go ahead and click this T2 Micro. It gives you one virtual CPU, 1 GB of memory, and is a great kind of just way instance type to start your journey into AWS. Great, and then let's just confirm here through the steps. We're going to check the T2 Micro. Cool, and then we're going to configure some details here on this page. So most of the things we're going to leave with the default, and then we'll come back to this part, but I just want to walk you through these details here a little bit. We have number of instances. You can launch multiple. You can use different pricing options with spot instances. You can select where in your network configuration, multiple VPCs. I have a VPC set up already from a previous immersion day that probably need to delete tonight, but we'll go ahead. I'll just, yeah, that's fine. And then looking at the configurations here, other monitoring capabilities, etc. But then going down, and you might have this unselected, there's advanced details at the bottom of the screen, and I want you to select that to open it up. And then we're going to be putting some information into this user data. So going back to my lab, I'm going to copy this text. And this text is basically what is called bootstrapping. It's going to run the script. We're going to download this off of S3. It's a publicly accessible S3 file that is a shell script that's going to run, and it's going to set up an Apache server for us and do some configuration automation. But to keep it really simple, we created the script for you. And we just pasted in there with the hashtag include or pound include, depending on if you're a social media person or a programmer. Excellent. And then the next step, we're just going to confirm that we're using the default storage, and then we're going to add some tags. So we'll just use that 8 gigabytes that comes with it. Add a tag. We'll give it a tag for name. And let's just confirm if there is a name. And we'll call it this one, Chris Web Server. Awesome. And you can add multiple tags, which are great. We'll talk more about that with IAM tomorrow, but those are ways that you might have a different project, a different environment, like if it's a QA or staging or dev, you can use tags to really differentiate and search for and or reference tags, based not necessarily on the instance ID, but a methodology that's closer to what your business uses for naming conventions. Awesome. Next up here is the security group, and we'll just walk through what it's asking to do here. We're going to create a new security group. We'll call it your name web tier, so whatever your name is. And then we're going to allow SSH and port 80 for a HTTP protocol to get to this instance. Cool. So we'll create a new existing group. We'll call this Chris Web Tier, and I'll just do this. And then I'll add a rule for HTTP. You can choose custom port ranges as need be as well. You have the methodology here that's IPv4, but you can also include IPv6 configurations, and we can just say web server or SSH access. I also do want to call out, just for the case of this lab, I am keeping this source group open to the general public, so anybody could potentially access this server on these ports. You do have the ability to choose custom IP addresses or a specific IP address there. So just wanted to let you know that, and gives you a nice little warning about that. So here we're just reviewing everything, confirming again the image, the instance, the security group rules. It splits out some configurations. It shows the tags that get to it, and the instance details. We have information on what is going to be configured here. So let's go ahead and launch. We're acknowledging that we have access to the key pair, because without it, we won't have the ability to access it later. So we've acknowledged that we've downloaded, we know where that is on our local machine as part of this lab. Cool. So as this is launching, let's go back to the lab. Cool. And now this instance is launched. And because of where I launched it, it was just launched with the public IP address. So what I'm going to do really quickly here is attach an IP address to it. So I'm going to allocate an IP address to my pool of VPC, and that has been allocated. And then I'm going to associate that IP address. How to say? I'm going to associate it with an instance Now we could have assigned one initially. I just missed that step during the configuration port to have it automatically assign that. But then we go back looking at our running instances under the dashboard or listing instances. And now you can see that this box is running. It has the public IP address that I just allocated. If I copy this into my browser,
I think it's in a private subnet.
Is it in a private subnet? All right, apologize about that. I should have used the default VPC. So if you have the option to launch it into a default VPC at this time, you should be able to see that there. I will go ahead and fix that quickly, and I will show you that as we do the next lab section. Cool, so I'll fix that really quick, but if you use the default VPC, unlike I did, you should have a running web server that shows you this information